everyone, Roxanne here from FinanceRocks.com. Today I wanted to answer a question that I get asked a lot, which is how were my husband and I able to buy our $210,000 house in cash at the ages of 27 and 30? So I just wanted to say before I get into that this is not a how-to video. This is not how to buy a $210,000 house in cash. And the reason why it's not is because, you know, it's really specific to just what our lives are. I feel like a lot of this stuff might be difficult to replicate, but I did want to share it. And the hope is that there will be some nuggets that you might be able to take away just to help with your own financial journey. So this is just what we did, just our experience. It's a good story, good ending anyway. Sorry I spoiled it already. Yeah, and before I get into it, my channel is new, but if you are interested in getting alerted when I have new videos come out, feel free to like or subscribe. I'm going to be sharing about paying off debt and goal setting and coming up with savings plans, all kinds of personal finance related content. I hope you enjoy it. So let me go ahead and get right into it. Now this started in 2010 is the start of the story. So that was the year that I graduated school. Joe had been out of school for a little bit at that point, but not very long. The time that it took us to save up enough for the house was a 5-year time frame. During that 5-year time frame, we also had and paid off $49,000 worth of debt. And I'll detail that out for you guys, all the gory details. Yeah. It seemed like a lot. That was our combined debt, mostly student loans and some auto loans and a few little things. Start of it, I got hired as an accountant at a nonprofit. Worked the same place. Actually, I worked the same place since then, so more than just the 5 years. And my husband farmed for 5 years. His dad had bought a farm near Great Falls, Montana. And that's kind of near where he grew up, and he grew up on a farm, so this was not like out of the blue his dad bought a farm. He had bought the land and had planned on working both his place and this secondary farm. My husband decided that he would go ahead and lease that from his dad. In order to lease it, we had to, he had to do a business plan. Did a business plan and got from the bank a $100,000 revolving line of credit, which I was unfamiliar with, but essentially you can only borrow up to $100,000 at a time, and you just have to pay back some, and then you're able to withdraw again up to $100,000. Part of the plan was that he was going to exchange labor for equipment rentals. So he would go, he'd work our farm, and then he'd go out to his dad's house and help them out with stuff in exchange for equipment. He also did that same exchange with neighbors, so trading time for use of their tractors or whatever other farm equipment. We also did end up doing some rentals and hiring out some of the work when Joe was out helping at his dad's place. It was just kind of an overview on the farm. It was about 350 acres of planted crops, so we did barley and wheat and sold to beer companies. At the beginning we bought 100 cows, female cows, and every year we bred them and then would sell the calves. So that was the cow part. We also ended up leasing another, I think like 1,200 acres from another neighbor, so we could put the cows out in the pasture, so that wasn't farmable land, but just had the 350 acres of farm ground. So that was kind of the gist of it. Before we set out to do the farming, we did set 3 agreements, kind of like how, you know, when we had our discussion about how we were going to do the finances, these were kind of the 3 things that we came up with. So the first one was that we planned to live off of my income, and any income made on the farm would just be reinvested in the farm. I, had the stable income at the time, the accounting job. So we had the stable component, and then we had the variable component, which was the farm income. The second agreement was we were going to try to break even at least. Now, obviously, we had hoped to make money on the farm. You know, it's generally why people work on farms, not just for fun. And so we had hoped to make income, but the goal was at least to break even. We didn't really know what to expect going into it. If, you know, there would be like, you know, they say farming's really volatile. So you might have one year that's really good, another year that's really bad. And so you kind of have to, you know, try to find ways to even that out a little bit so it's not so sporadic on your life. We agreed we would live off of my income and pay off debt off of my income as well. That was another bit of it. And we were going to try to break even. The third thing that we agreed on was that we were going to try to pay off debt as fast as possible. So, like I said, we had $49,000 worth of debt. So, just to try to pay that off as soon as possible, we didn't have a written plan or anything. I'll also say that I've always DIY'd my finances. So, you know, we didn't follow any particular plan per se of anybody like on the internet. You know, we made it up as we went. I decided on the avalanche method of paying off of debt, which I didn't know that that was what it was called at the time. And avalanche payoff debt method, that just means that we paid off all the highest interest rate debt first. So my student loans, for example, I had some at 6%, some at 2%, some at 4%. So the avalanche method would say to pay off the 6% loan first, and then once that loan has been paid off in full, then you pay minimum. You always pay minimums on everything, but you pay off the 6% one in full, and then you pay off the second highest interest rate, so the 4%, and then once those are gone, the 2%. So use the debt avalanche method. I've always been afraid of debt from growing up. Found out the hard way that the only thing worse than not having money is having negative money. So we did leverage debt. You know, we had the $49,000 and we did take out debt for the farm. But that was always, we were always very serious about the debt. We were willing to sacrifice to make sure that that got paid off early. So we actually did not do any budgeting at this time. What we did, I consider to be more extreme than budgeting. Basically just having the mindset like, I can't spend any money. Any extra money that I have needs to go immediately to debt payoff. So really like no permission to spend any money. Now obviously I did spend on a few things and actually did go on a vacation or two. But other than that, we lived very frugally, and I'll get into that in a bit too, the numbers. The other thing that we did, we actually did invest a little bit while we were paying off debt. It wasn't a conscious decision that we had really made, it just kind of happened, oddly enough. Joe had heard about IRAs as a way to save a little bit on taxes, so he had started an IRA account, and then I regret not starting my 401k account earlier, but I did start my work 401k around towards the end of this 5-year time frame. Here is a breakdown of the $49,000 in debt that we had. $35,000 was student loans, $25,000 of that was mine, $10,000 of that was Joe's, $13,000 in vehicles, so that was $3,000 on my Honda and $10,000 on the farm truck. $1,000 for my engagement ring. And that's it. That's the $49,000 that we had in debt at the start of this. Talking about income now. The income that we had, I started out, so I went back and looked at my taxes. In 2010, I made about $18,000. And over the course of the 5-year time frame, got that up to $36,000. And now that is net of taxes. So pretty good. I mean, that's a pretty good wage for Montana. Certainly it blew my mind when I got hired because it was way more money than I had ever even come close to making before. It felt like an insane amount of money, especially because I had been in school and, you know, had been living really affordably. So it seemed to go very far. So that was what we lived on, that's what we paid off debt with over the 5-year time frame. Averages to be about $28,000 per year. And like I said, that income came from my degrees in accounting, so worked as an accountant did some payroll, did some accounts payable, did a little bit of financial analyst stuff. Yeah, worked full time. I did that first summer out of school, actually. It took me a little while to get a job, so that $18,000 was working part of the year. Anyway, it was a partial year of income. So anyway, after that, it was full-time work for me. Joe's income during the time, so we ended up, when we cashed out the farm at the end of the 5 years, it was about $230,000. So that was his entire, like I said, we didn't pull any income out while we were farming. So that was his whole income for 5 years. So divide that by 5, and that turns out to be about $46,000 per year. So an amazing salary in Montana. Kind of one of the things that differentiates our story a little bit is that we are dinks, dual income, no kids. Now we have a blue heeler dog, but no kids. Our dog's pretty affordable. That was a big factor in us being able to do this, is that we were both working full-time the whole time. So dinks. Highly recommend it. Anyway, so that means that our income averaged about $74,000 per year over the 5-year time frame. So the farm details. We leased the farm from Joe's dad. Now, unfortunately, I was not tracking on a monthly basis our income and expenses over this time frame. So what I was doing was every 6 months or so, I would dump our bank transactions, categorize everything, and add it up and see how much we were spending. Now, unfortunately, that was many years ago and a laptop ago, so I wasn't able to find my spreadsheets to say how much exactly we had in income and living expenses during this time. But I've back calculated it, and I think that we were spending about $1,092 per month on everything. So that was all of our regular living expenses, food, utilities, fund budget, that was everything. We did have some unusualness during this time. We cash flowed our wedding. That was $8,000 that we paid, and we had some family help, but $8,000 is what we ended up contributing towards that. I also, for $4,800, took my 3 little brothers on a vacation to the Grand Canyon, so that was great. I also had about $6,000 that I ended up helping family members with. Partially, it was starting up a business, and so anyway, ended up helping family with a little bit of stuff, some giving. And then our honeymoon was about $7,000 to the Bahamas, and it was great. That was worth it. So $1,092 per month isn't a lot. That's less than a lot of people pay in rent alone. So just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what it looked like. What did that look like in our life at the time? So before I go into it, I just wanted to say I kind of have them broken out into 2 different categories. So the first one is forced savings. I kind of like to think of it as forced savings because there was some things that we didn't really have a choice in that ended up saving us some money. And then the second section is the intentional savings, things that we did to try to save money. As far as forced savings, there was only one housing option on the farm. There was the farmhouse. And now, it wasn't in the greatest of shape, and I will say that we had the opportunity that we could have fixed it up, but unfortunately we just never were able to because we both worked full-time and had to commute. So I commuted to town, which was an hour, and then Joe would work on the farm, and then he'd commute to his dad's farm to help, and so that was another hour. So anyway, between 2-hour commutes and working, just never ended up fixing it up. But so anyway, what does that mean? That means red shag carpet and mice problems, and it really wasn't that bad. I only ever saw one mouse in the house, and yeah, he got away. Secondly, we had pretty low cost of food while we lived on the farm. Now, sadly, it was kind of forced savings because we were outside of the range of delivery. No pizza delivery, no Chinese delivery. Yeah, that was hard. That was a hard few years. Also low cost of food because, you know, we lived an hour from the grocery store, so we would always try to buy in bulk in order to minimize the number of trips that we had to go out to the store and back. And buying in bulk is a good way to save money. Fewer trips to the grocery store is a good way to save money. So kind of out of necessity, we had to trim that down. And then thirdly, we were also an hour away from good restaurants. There was one bar that had food, but it was almost food, not quite food. It was okay, but we only ever went there once. And then there was a pizza place that was about a half hour away, but once again, not great. So very limited options, and options that are far away means very little restaurant dining out. So that was another way that we were kind of forced to save money based on the situation. Low entertainment costs was another one. So basically, the extent of our entertainment costs at the time were Netflix and Gamefly. And that was really about it, those two subscriptions. It was really nice because it was kind of a novelty living on the farm, especially for my family and friends that had never really been to farms. So we got a lot of visitors. You know, my family would come, my friends would come, and you know, we could all just hang out on the farm. We would take the farm four-wheeler and drive out to the pasture and shoot guns. So that was great entertainment for very little cost. I guess bullets would be another. I don't know that I had that in entertainment budget, but anyway, very little cost for that compared to like going to concerts and, you know, going to events and things, since once again we were kind of far away from everything, so going to things was a big commitment and didn't happen very often. And the last of our forced savings was a minimal amount of vacations. Now, you can just leave cows in a field, but you really shouldn't leave cows in a field. Apparently they're great jumpers and escape artists, really. So that combined with, you know, making it difficult to plan things because of the seasonality of farming, like you don't really know when you're going to be able to harvest, or, you know, when you're going to need to, you know, start irrigation. It's just hard to plan things and hard to get time away, hard to get someone to come and fill in for you. So that was a big contributing factor in not doing very many vacations over the time. We did, like I said, do the honeymoon, and I did take my brothers on my rocation to the Grand Canyon, and that was about it. That was about it for the 5-year time frame. So not a lot of traveling. I did make a few trips home to my hometown, just like 4-hour drive. So that happened a little bit, but once again, not very frequently. The things that we did to save money that were intentional. One of the categories of our budget that was really low over this time frame was clothing. Now, I was expecting to need to spend a lot of money on a wardrobe because I had just graduated school and I got this professional job, and so I needed a full wardrobe. Like, I did not have button-up shirts and black pants. So what I did, I ended up thrift shopping my entire work wardrobe. So every shirt and every pair of pants that I had came from the thrift store. I did end up buying shoes and, you know, underwear, all of that fun stuff, new. But as far as shirts and pants, all thrift store, garage sale, that kind of thing, which really makes your budget stretch a long way if you're only spending like $3 on a shirt. So that was a good one. And plus I enjoy garage sailing and thrift shopping because it's kind of like treasure hunting and a good way to save money too. And then for Joe, so he actually at the same time got a bunch of hand-me-ups from his 2 younger brothers that are taller than him. So they had outgrown some clothes. So he got a bunch of shirts, sweatshirts, jeans, basically a full wardrobe. And since he was just out there bumping around on the farm, I doubt it looked like that, but since he was just out on the farm, he could just wear whatever clothes. He didn't have to look fancy or, you know, professional or anything. So he basically got an entire wardrobe. We did buy him like a nice coat, and he needed boots. But otherwise, we spent very little on clothing over the 5 years. Okay, another thing we did was to buy used vehicles and to keep them for as long as we possibly could. So I just had one car over this time frame. It was the same car I had for 2 years before that, and the same car I've had for the 4 years since. So one car for me, and we bought Joe a used farm truck. Now it was a nice truck. It is a nice truck, and we still have it. But buying used is great because someone else is paying the bulk of the depreciation on the asset. Since depreciation, like, I don't know how it goes. Anyway, it's highest at the start of the vehicle's life and then lower over time. So that was a way that we saved money. Also, when you have a used vehicle, it's a lot cheaper for insurance and registration and all that secondary car cost. The last way that I intentionally saved money was keeping my dumb phone 3 years after the point that I was eligible for upgrading it to a smartphone. And this was pretty painful. This was a sacrifice, to be honest. Like, I enjoyed technology, and basically everybody that I knew had a smartphone years before me, so felt left out. Which, in the grand scheme of things, I'm still glad that I waited the 3 extra years. That's basically like having one less phone over my entire lifetime. So whatever a phone costs, that's how much I saved. I just had my regular phone that only made phone calls. I suppose most of you probably know what phones were like before smartphones. Alright, so that's what our life looked like over the 5 years. After those 5 years, Joe had decided that he wanted to go back to school. He wanted to go and get a master's degree in computer science. So we sold the cows and sold the last of the crop and moved off of the farm. Once we cashed everything out, we had the $240,000. So I don't know if you picked up on this throughout my story, but this was not 5 years of intentionally saving for a house. So kind of strange, I know, but you know, we got to the end and we had the $230,000, and basically we were like, oh, that's a lot of money. What should we do with it? It's a good problem to have, really. And so we talked about investing the money. At the time, I was very unfamiliar with investing. I had only done that like a little bit in my 401k, and so I definitely did not feel comfortable investing the money. Definitely not all of it, just for fear of risk, and I didn't understand investing. That was why we decided to go ahead and buy a house with it. The house that we bought cost $210,000, and then we figured the other remaining money we could just use for Joe to go to school. So that was money to pay for the master's degree. And it turns out he was able to work. We weren't sure if it was going to be too much of a time commitment for him to do school and work. But it ended up being fine. So he worked and about broke even. So anyway, that money just went to our savings. So I do sometimes think about, you know, if that was the right decision or not. If we should have learned more about investing then and invested more of the money and only like taken the amount we needed for the down payment on this house, you know, and invested the rest. Certainly another option that we could have done would have been to use that full $210,000 as a down payment on a really fancy house. That, to be honest, we didn't even think about that. We had it in our minds that we wanted a reasonably priced house. So anyway, long story long, we decided to buy our house. In summary, here are the things that we did to buy our house in cash. We're dinks. We paid off our debt quickly. So our student loans, for example, they would have been on a 10-year time frame for payoff, and we paid them off in 4. So rapid debt payoff certainly helped save on interest. We had a high savings rate, a big gap between the income that we had and our expenses, more than 50%. We had vowed not to touch the money that we made with the farm, that money would be reinvested. And thinking back, that this has been something that's been helpful to me quite a bit, which is really making up my mind that money doesn't really exist. That's kind of how I saved up my first $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 emergency funds, up to 10. So kind of setting that money aside and making it so that, yeah, there's money in the farm account, but it's not money we can do anything with. It's the farm money. So that decision to not touch it and taking that very seriously, that certainly helped us. We had the breakdown of income, so we had the stable component and the variable component. We leveraged debt, and there's a component of entrepreneurship to what Joe was doing. So those were things that, you know, helped us to make more than we might have otherwise made in that time frame. We used the avalanche method to pay down our debts. We reinvested in the business, so every year we used a little bit less of that $100,000 loan until by the end all of the expenses had just been paid out of the account, meaning all of the income that came was, you know, profit. We did not budget, but we were very frugal and tracked our spending, even though I can't find those spreadsheets anywhere. We bought things used cars and used clothing. There was the component of opportunity from family. We definitely would have never gotten into farming had it not been for, you know, Joe's dad buying the place and offering to let us lease it. So there was opportunity there, and then there was also some luck involved as well. You know, part of the reason we didn't touch that farm money for 5 years was we knew that there could be a bad year at any year that can wipe out, you know, your savings. So there's risk involved, and we got really lucky with that, not having, you know, we had some hail damage and, you know, a small fire at one point, I think. But, you know, as far as farms go, it was minimal amount of damage, so a bit of luck. Okay, so Joe told me this quote: "Wife working in town, you can't beat it." He said that farmers say that. I'm pretty sure that he made it up, but anyway, kind of goes back to the dual income. So that's it. That's the story of how we bought our house in cash at the ages of 27 and 30. So if you have questions, I'm a pretty open book. I shared our income during the time, basically shared our net worth, because started out with a negative in debt and ended up with a house. And so anyway, if you have questions, feel free to drop them below and I will answer them. Thank you for sticking around. That was a long video, and if you really stuck around to the end, thank you so much. You are great. If you liked this video or found any help in it, you know, you could like it if you want. Until next time, I hope your finances rock.